Good evening, everybody, and welcome to this APM Northern Ireland branch webinar on Translink's P3O Information Management System. I'm Catherine Hanratty. I'm the chair of the Northern Ireland branch. Please be aware that this webinar is being recorded and you are in listen-only mode. The session lasts about 60 minutes, consisting of about 45 minutes of knowledge share and concluding with Q&A at the end. Please submit any questions via the questions panel during the webinar for us to address at the end. Following the webinar, the recording will be uploaded onto the APM YouTube account and the slides will be published on our APM SlideShare account, both of which will be listed on the branch community page on the APM website after about 5 working days. This session will count towards your CPD. To note, there is a Menti code. It is published, I think, in the chat, and at the end of the session, we'll be able to invite you to contribute to Menti for any key takeaways. So now I'm going to introduce you to Brendan, Harkin and Michael Bradley from Translink. Brendan is head of Translink's Portfolio Management Office and P3O function. He has over 30 years experience in planning, delivery and assurance of projects and is an APM chartered project professional. As head of PMO, he's responsible for managing Translink's capital investment portfolio as well as programme and project assurance. Brendan has promoted and led the development of best practice P3O governance framework within Translink, including a fit-for-purpose P3O information management system. Michael is currently Programme Development Manager within Translink's PMO, having previously worked in various roles in planning and delivering major projects for Network Rail. He's responsible for forward planning and performance management of programme and projects across the Translink portfolio. Michael has led in design, development and implementation of the new P3O IM system. So it gives me great pleasure to pass over to Brendan now and welcome Brendan.
Thank you, Catherine. Welcome to everyone for this evening's APM webinar. We're delighted to be here to give a presentation on the Translink's P3O Information Management System. And thanks for Catherine for the introductions there. Appreciate that there. So, thanks again. So the presentation today or this evening is in two parts. I'm going to give an overview of the background to Translink's P3O governance structure and strategy, and how it's developed over the number of years to where we are at this stage. And as part of that strategy, then that required the development of information management model fit for purpose. And I'm going to hand over then at that stage in the presentation to Michael, who's going to talk through sort of the development of the project brief, and then sort of a walkthrough of what that looks like, so it feels like for Translink today. So just for those who don't know Translink, who are we? Translink is a non-departmental public body comprising Northern Ireland Railways, Ulster Bus and City Bus, 3 operating companies, and we're responsible for providing public transport services in Northern Ireland. Our sponsoring department for government is the Department for Infrastructure, DFI. The organisation manages a diverse portfolio of bus and rail fleet, infrastructure, property and business systems. Our current capital portfolio comprises over 350 projects that's across business as usual and enhancement programmes with an annual budget of £240 million. A little bit of the history of the Translink or PMO. The origins of the current PMO go back to about 2008, when we established a small project control office within the infrastructure division, as it was at the time. And it was tasked with really setting in place a governance structure, particularly for infrastructure projects. So as part of that initial phase, we developed a suite of project management procedures, which were based on what was at the time the best practice government for guidance for construction projects, which is the Achieving Excellence in Construction Framework. And we framed it around also the APM project body of knowledge, formed the basis of our initial suite of procedures. And as part of that process, we developed a performance management framework, including a defined project stages and definitions, And crucially at that stage, we created a baseline for a number of project and program management performance KPIs, which last to this day. By around 2014, then the function of the Project Control Office, as it was known then, was expanded to include all divisions across Translink, with a view to having a combined office in terms of the forward planning process. So that involved at that stage holistic planning right across the organisation and standardising a number of our performance management processes. And as a result of that coordination and the centralisation, we identified a step change in capital investment governance requirements going forward. Following that in 2016, as a result of that previous identification, we adopted a best practice P3O governance model to support effective planning and delivery of the portfolio and optimise return on investment. And that was presented to your executive and adopted at that stage. And by 2018, then the PMO had become a more consolidated office, a physical office, and it matured, consolidated, and has resulted then around 2019 with the development of an information management system, which we're going to talk about later in this presentation. So as part of the P3O strategy, there are a number of themes out there which will probably look familiar to a number of you. We wanted to set up a P3O organisational governance structure that was fit for purpose, with clear lines of responsibility and definitions. We wanted to introduce best practice P3O procedures at 3 levels: project, programme, and portfolio, and have them interlinked. We wanted to integrate further the P3O planning and performance management framework. We wanted to bring a focus on programme management, and particularly to deliver, I suppose, support business change in particular, and the programme management as well as a focus on value and benefits management was another key aspect of the strategy. What we really wanted to do was to achieve strategic alignment from our strategic objectives through programmes, projects, objectives, and all the way through to benefits and projects. We wanted to introduce a competency management framework to support the planning and delivery of the portfolio. We wanted just a continuous improvement strategy based around lessons learned. And then to support the delivery of these and to enable the P3O strategy, we wanted to introduce a P3O Information Management System and portal that was fit for purpose. So just today, a little bit before we get onto that there, I suppose just the model that we've adopted within Translink, that's probably recognisable as a basic P3O model. Our projects and programmes are delivered, I suppose, separately through the portfolio office. We are independent in that regard. So projects report into programmes. The portfolio office sits to the side. We act as a supporting and assurance piece out there, planning assurance, and assuring effectively our executive committee in terms of a standardised project performance reporting. DFI, our overarching sponsor. Then there's a link between the portfolio office and our government COE, which is the Department of Finance, and we have a memorandum of understanding on that regard, and a link across to gateway reviews process. And there are multiple stakeholders who link across the project programs and the portfolio. And at the top there, that's just a summary of the objective of our organisational structure. It's about informed decision making, optimising return on investment, and effective governance. Then the structure of the P3O for every organisation will look slightly different. For us, we've gone for a 4-tier layer structure. We have an overarching portfolio, which is their entire capital investment program portfolio. And then we've broken that down to 6 sub-portfolios: network engineering, network development, which is enhancement, property, bus and fleet engineering, real fleet, and business systems, ICT business systems. And then within each of those sub-portfolios, we have a number of programs. Now, this is quite a simplified view of that there. There are different, more programs than I show on the screen. But there will be programs within each of these sub-portfolios, and that's just showing you a sample of those. And then within each program, then there are multiple projects. Some programs are a small number of projects, and others have many projects. And then within each project itself, then they're broken down further to project activities, and then they are tied with a whole range of subcategory tags that allow us to make sense of the information and roll it up from project to program to sub-portfolio and portfolio. The functions of the P3O office itself, or portfolio office itself, three functions. Again, I'm sure many of you will recognise there's three functions: planning, delivery, and COE or assurance. So in terms of planning, we're responsible for that strategic alignment, scenario forward planning, project prioritisation, financial planning, benefits mapping, at a portfolio planning level, risks and opportunities, dependencies, change management, and resource planning. And then in terms of supporting the delivery function, there are a whole range of support functions there: project startup and closure, risk and value management workshops, supporting business case developments, reviewing key documents, processes, delivery strategies, change management again, and information management. And then across the assurance function, we develop best practice procedures, templates, again to the three levels: portfolio, program, and project. We support training, gateway and internal review process, and health checks, post-project evaluations, lessons learned. And again, we undertake the role of the project assurance function at project and program boards. And I suppose just one point, I suppose, just in terms of the portfolio office, there's quite a balance in terms of the time allocated to each of those three categories. So there can be sort of a challenge to draw of your resources, and the balance required across all three of those. This slide is a little bit, as it was, a little bit messy, but it's an attempt to show then the process we have. With three suites of procedures. We have 350 projects that are plus managed at any one time, and as projects are delivered and plant delivered, there are a range of project KPIs that are tracked and monitored right throughout the project and program life cycle. So as projects and programs are identified, established, defined, and set up to a business case, each month the whole range of data is updated: costs and schedules, benefits, risks, issues, change, lessons learned, and then supported by a whole range of other documentation as well. And then we have, through the P3O structure, then we have the ability to escalate those KPIs and project data from project to program to portfolio, and ultimately to our executive to support informed decision making. And this takes us back, I suppose, to the key part of this presentation this evening, which is to support that whole P3O structure and the regional strategy, which required an information management model, and to support the ever-increasing demand in our projects. And go back to the step change we had, we recognise what we had in our organisation was not fit for purpose. It was no longer going to be able to manage the number of projects and the value of projects and the complexity of projects. And not only that, the increasing demand for information, accurate information, and live real-time information and bespoke reporting. So at that stage, we developed a project brief with a view to developing a new information management system for Translink. And at this stage, I'm going to hand it over to Michael, who's going to take us through the project brief and then a presentation through the system itself.
Thanks, Brendan. So I suppose prior to the information management system being implemented, Translink, I suppose, had a siloed approach to project management. Individual project documentation lived in departmental drives. A single Microsoft project file was used to forecast our capital investment plan, and there was significant quantities of printed documentation. This sort of restricted the P3O's oversight, governance, and assurance facilities functions. So the requirements of the information management system, we wanted a cloud-based enterprise management system that would enable remote working for our project delivery teams. There's a capacity need, obviously, there for sort of 800 plus projects and 150 plus users, and that was the future-proof the system itself. We wanted a PMO homepage or portal that project teams could land on and then move out of to the system itself. And ultimately that homepage would also hold some key centralized documentation such as our P3O procedures, letters of offer funding, approvals, historic capital plans and reporting. We wanted a vertically integrated P3O planning functions similar to obviously what we've shown, so being able to escalate from project to program to portfolio. We ultimately needed cost-loaded project schedules, and this was to facilitate financial planning and forecasting. We needed integrated project management tools within the system for risk, benefit, change management, highlight reporting, etc. And pretty crucially, we needed that document management capability so that we had one oversight of project documentation, core centralized repository for all that information and documents, so that if anyone within the project team was to leave the business, there was access to that information readily at hand by the P3O and the teams themselves. As well, ultimately, this quite critically needed to come from source data, so there was a single source of truth. Prior to this system being implemented, there was a multitude of reports, potentially reporting slightly different versions of the same thing. So this has allowed us to have a single source of information, and ultimately then escalate that up into our sort of bespoke analysis and reporting and management framework. So just looking then at the model itself, so the P3O considered a number of options whenever they were working their way through the requirements for this system. And ultimately, we decided to go with a Microsoft Project Online system with a SharePoint Online system that's built into it. And the reason for that is ultimately the existing skill set within Translink had a bias towards sort of Microsoft projects. We already use a suite of them. And ultimately, the project delivery teams were more akin to Project Professional than Primavera 6 or Ask the Power project. So within that system then we have what's called the project center, which is the sort of landing page for project sites and project schedules. And those project schedules then are used to forecast sort of key milestones, performance of the project. They are cost and in some cases resource loaded. And then the other side of the solution was a SharePoint Online platform, which allowed us to hold project static data, which allows Translink to tag projects in a multitude of ways. It stores project organization charts and ultimately funding amounts. It has a document library facility, and then again that integrated project management tools are all built into that as well. So the risk registry logs, etc., are all there. With all that information, we're able to then pull it through into Power BI. And Power BI has really sort of created a bit of a step change within the P3O, and it allows us to use that information in a multitude of ways and help facilitate reporting up to our senior leadership team and also then to project delivery teams as well. So hopefully now I'm going to try and screen share. I'm going to take you through a bit of a demonstration of the system itself. So I'm going to take you through the PMO homepage or P3O portal, and I'm going to take you through Project Center, and I'm also going to take you through our Power BI reporting. So hopefully now you should be able to see our P3O portal. The fact that nobody said they can't, I'm assuming we are good. So this is our landing page sort of for project delivery teams. So you can see that, and this is on our internal intranet. So on the left-hand side, we have a structure of libraries and lists. So you can see obviously we store our project change, portfolio change, issue, and risk registers here. But ultimately, we also store sort of historic capital investment plans, key documents that we've received from DFI or DOF, and pretty critically, we also have our P3O procedures stored here. So just looking at those P3O procedures very quickly, they're set up in the exact same way as our vertically integrated P3O plan. So we have portfolio procedures, program management templates and procedures, and again, project management templates and procedures. And this provides our project delivery teams a one-stop shop effectively for all their project management needs, as it were, and they all have access to this. So just stepping back to our homepage, you'll also see that there's a number of links, not only to sort of internal sites, such as our contracts department, but also to our external bodies such as APM, DOF, and ultimately then it has links to our project center and Power BI. Apologies, for some reason my internet is running exceptionally slow. Okay, so on down, you can hopefully, once this decides to load, see a number of key links at the bottom. So as I previously mentioned, we have a link to our internal contracts department. We have links out to sort of APM and DOF, and ultimately for project managers, we have this link to our project online system. When project managers click on that, it will take them through to this project center. And again, you can see that we keep reiterating this, but we have that vertically integrated plan. So we have our sort of sub-portfolios, network engineering, property, rail fleet, and below that we have our sub-programs or programs underneath that. Whenever a project manager comes into this, obviously they only have access to the projects that they're associated to or they're the owner of, and just given that the function of the P3O, we obviously have oversight of all those projects. So just taking you through one of those, hopefully. A project manager, whenever they click into their project schedule and just showing you the sort of user experience that they have, when they click into a project site, it will bring them up the project schedule. Now, one of the benefits of this system is that not obviously we use Microsoft Project Professional pretty exclusively, and we use that through the application, and we're able to cost load those schedules. But also this system will allow PMs to update their schedules through the web browser itself. What that means is that PMs can remotely work, they can update their schedule, dates and completion, percentage completion on the move. They can use it from a number of applications, a tablet or a mobile phone. Sorry, apologies, that's only just getting up now. But they're able to update that effectively remotely. So you can see obviously it has a Gantt chart down the right hand side. With this as well, and just because of how slow my internet seems to be, I'm not going to click into the project details, but on that project details page, there is a list of information regarding the ownership of the project, that project organization chart, who's the senior supplier, user, and also it contains a number of Translink categories. So we tag projects by business as usual versus enhancement. We tag it with how that project's going to be funded, whether it's funded or self-funded. So all that information lives in that project details page. The truth is that project details page is quite critical to the system for driving the Power BI reporting, which I'll hopefully show you later on. But clicking through to the other side, so this is sort of the project online, project center side, just taking us through to the SharePoint online side of things. PMs will click into the project site. And again, similar to our PMO homepage, you'll see a list of libraries on the left-hand side. You'll also see sort of key documentation that a project manager has tagged on the right. And again, when we're working our way through this, you can see that we have a document workspace where project managers are able to drag and drop their key project documentation. Hopefully this will load up. And we've set up a folder structure here that's based around our project lifecycle. So again, every organization will have a slightly different version of this, but we work from inception through to sort of a maintenance construction. So we've set that up in such a way that project managers can store key documentation pertaining to each phase individually. We also have obviously those project management tools like risk registers, issue logs, benefit plans, and lesson learned logs. I'll just try and show you a risk register here. So it's a fairly simplistic view in our SharePoint. It's a list that you're able to score inherent risk scoring and residual risk scoring. And ultimately all that information we can then pull through to Power BI. Apologies again, my internet seems to be lagging a bit behind here. Okay, so as you can see, we have risk registers, we have issue logs, change registers, and again, project managers will go in and update this on a monthly basis. We also have this highlight report, and again, just because of how slow my internet is, I won't click into it, but that highlight report allows project managers to qualitatively assess how their project has performed in this period, their plan for next period, and then a qualitative assessment of the risks and issues. And again, we're able to pull that through into Power BI and report that up to sort of senior management teams, and also allows project teams to use that in a multitude of meetings and project boards. So just taking a step back to our P3O homepage. So moving across on this wee tab, we have obviously a link out to Microsoft Power BI. And again, we use Microsoft Power BI fairly exclusively now for some of our reports, and we will obviously pull some of that information into paper reports for our executive, but it has really created a step change in how the P3O operates. So just clicking into Power BI. Power BI I think is used a lot throughout Translink. I think I saw today it was 1,200 and something current reports sitting within Power BI for our organization. So it has really been taken up across the organization as a whole. So I'm going to just take you through a couple of key reports that I've pulled out just that might be of interest to those on this webinar. So firstly, I'm just going to take you through the Program Managers report, hopefully when this loads up. So when this loads up, we're going to land on a dashboard, a portfolio dashboard. And again, you can see that on this left-hand side, let me just make that full screen. So on the left-hand side, we have a dial where where you can see our sub-portfolios, network engineering through to network development. On the right-hand side, you can see a line diagram. Just to explain this line diagram, the green line is our current projected outturn costs. The black line is our current actual costs by period for this financial year. The amber line is their committed spend to date, so anything that's contractually committed. And then the red line is our total funding amount. I would just advise that there is some dummy projects in here, so some of the numbers will not be necessarily 100% correct, but it represents the system that we use. We have 397 live projects, and you can see these key tags here will give you a bit of information. So we have, again, our total projection, funding, variances, and committed spend. And then below that, we have that breakdown by our sub-portfolio again. So this is in year, in period variances. So you can see the projection last month, you can see the projection this month, and you can see that key variance. Now, again, the power of Power BI, I suppose, is that you're able to then drill down to a layer below that. So an individual or a project team could click on their sub-portfolio, so in this case, bus and rail fleet, and that will automatically update all the charts to specifically my audio connection disappeared there for a moment. Okay, hopefully everyone can still hear me. Moving on to the next sort of slide, we have a forward planning slide. So again, this is our portfolio projection for the next sort of 4 years, so this year plus 3. And in a similar way, you can see that there's a build up there by sub-portfolio. You can see the breakdown over the next 4 years. And again, coming back to that static data that we use within each project site, we have BAU and enhancement tags. So you can see what our breakdown of our portfolio is by that business as usual versus enhancements. Again, you can drill down by portfolio, by sub-portfolio, or by program. So just clicking on network engineering, you will see that this will automatically update and show sort of those program managers that are responsible for network engineering, that key information for them. Just taking it a step below that again, so down to sort of a project level, we can sort of drill down into project KPIs. So as a whole, you can see that we use sort of 4 KPIs. We use cost, schedule, SQE, and benefit. Cost and schedule are quantitative. They're driven from those cost-loaded schedules we spoke about previously and our funding amounts. And then SQE and benefit is a qualitative assessment currently. However, we are looking at how to make them a more quantitative assessment. And below that, you can see some key information pertaining to those projects, funding amounts and planned completion dates. And in a very similar way, you know, we can drill down into those sort of sub-portfolios, and so, or even down to a project manager level, and you can see sort of key information pertaining to those sub-portfolios or project manager. This is a very useful sort of tool for SROs as well and program managers within Translink. Just skipping ahead, I'm going to show you the risk register. I'm going to skim over the issue and change register just simply because they're all of a very similar ilk. But you can see that we have a one overarching project risk register or portfolio risk register. We can pull all the information from every single individual live project risk register into one place. We're able then to look at potentially our risk potential assessment or potentially our risk score. And as a portfolio office, we can see the highest scoring risks to the highest scoring or the most risk potential projects. So again, quite powerful for our SROs, program managers, and again, even at a project manager level, just to see the amount of risk that they're carrying across the projects that they're managing. In a very similar way, issues and change can be seen across the portfolio or across the program. Jumping down to our highlight report, again, this is quite a powerful document to any SRO or program manager or even project manager. It provides key information pertaining to individual projects. And again, some of the information here has been redacted or changed for the purposes of this demonstration. But again, SROs are able to go to one Power BI report instead of having to pick up the phone, and they can very quickly see a brief update on their project, what's the plan for the next stages, and then that qualitative assessment again of those key risks and issues. You can see that those KPIs for schedule and cost have been pulled through here, and also just a bit of a quick view of issues and risks that are pertaining to each project. Just going to show you again, just taking it down a level again, so it's probably something more interested by project managers and program managers, but again, we're able to look at all milestones across all our portfolio, across however many years we want to look at. So we obviously have a baseline capital investment plan, and again, we can track milestones across the whole of the portfolio and programs and project level from this system. Just going to take you back out and just drop onto another report for our benefit management or benefit realization plan. Again, this is being built into our into that suite of reports there, but at the minute, just because of it still being in a build process, it's sitting slightly separately. But again, as you can see, we can pull all the information through from our benefit plans and our benefit realization plans into one place, and we have tied those benefits by our Translink strategic objectives. So those strategic objectives, which are in the process of being updated, are operational excellence, customer satisfaction, passenger growth, and value for money. So again, it's quite powerful. We can drill down into individual strategic objectives and see the projects that are going to provide a benefit to that strategic objective. So again, it's quite a significant thing to be able to show the benefits that our capital investment plan should realize for that one objective. Similarly, we tag them with web tag categories, so we can drill down into, say, social and go into environmental benefits, and again, we can see across the portfolio some of those projects that are going to produce benefits that are associated to that web tag category. Finally, just before I go back to our PowerPoint presentation, just taking you through one last report, so our lessons learned report. In a very similar manner, all those lessons learned across all our live projects and historic projects can be pulled into one place. So again, very powerful for project managers about to initiate a new project, or even whenever they're delivering a project, that they can go to this lessons learned log and pull out any key lessons learned that may be useful to them. Okay, I'm just going to take a step. I'm going to just jump back to the PowerPoint presentation now. So hopefully, sorry, let me just do that again. So I'm just going to take you through, I suppose, what the plan is next for Translink's P3O Information Management System. So as we've had this system live now for probably 2 to 3 years, and it's developed over that time, and we've obviously built in additional functionality as we went along. It's at this point that we're sort of beginning to see small things that we could change to create an incremental change to our system. So we're planning to introduce this refresh within the next sort of calendar financial year. So we're going to move towards what's called Power Apps, and it ultimately will create a slightly more streamlined user interface for the project delivery teams. It will also still obviously have all those project management tools and document management. It will live off what we are calling Microsoft Dataverse, or Microsoft are calling the Dataverse, which will replace sort of SharePoint Online. But again, from a user interface, they probably won't ever see that. Just from a P3O management point of view, it will allow us sort of greater design flexibility. So if we want to change a register, we can change it across the whole system rather than having to change it individually. And we'll still obviously use Microsoft Project, and we'll still be tracking projects performance through that. But we're also going to implement a bit more use of Power Automate, and that should hopefully allow us to use automated document sign-off. So whenever a key project document has been completed by a project manager, that will automatically be sent through to key signatories, so senior users, senior suppliers, and the SRO for signatory. And again, that will automatically create a PDF document that will then be stored within the project site. So again, it creates everything slightly more seamlessly for the project manager. And again, the plan is still to report through Power BI. As I sort of said, it's fairly well now embedded within Translink, and it's sort of a fairly well accepted tool for reporting. And I suppose just taking you through sort of those benefits we're hoping to achieve from this refresh. So again, flexibility of design, that improved UI, and that automated document sign-off we can see being quite powerful. We're going to try and build in additional program management capability so that there is more linkage between individual project schedules, so that a program manager can clearly identify interdependencies between those projects and sort of have a bit more usability around that. We're planning to increase our capacity. What we found is as the uptake of our system has increased, we're beginning to run out of storage space within SharePoint. As you can imagine, with 400 live projects and people storing lots of documentation, that capacity fairly quickly fills up. And we want to increase this sort of speed of reporting for ourselves. So sometimes these Power BI reports take a wee bit of time to refresh, and we think that sort of streamlining some of the back office bits will hopefully help speed that up. And finally, we're hoping to sort of create a more user-friendly document management system that again will be more easier to share to externals and various people. But that is the end of our presentation, and I think I'm going to hand back to Catherine at this point, just if there's any questions that we can help answer.
I'm going to unmute and turn my camera on because there are quite a few questions here for you. So Brendan and Michael, thank you for the presentation. The first question here is, how did you work out the costs against budget? Did you work out budget profiles at project dossier level and then add them up to program level? Or I suppose it's a multiple question, this one, so I'll start with that one. Did you start with individual projects and build up the budgets to program level?
Yeah, Michael, you can jump in here. So, but yeah, so the structure that we show in there is essentially everything is built up from project to program to portfolio level. So we have project costs are built up from project activities across 300, almost 400 projects as it is now. So it's a very much bottom up pyramid type of structure. The other point is it's always live, so it's entirely fluid. As each month goes past, every single project within that entire portfolio is getting refreshed, revisited, and look at the risks, look at the cost. We make an assessment on sort of the residual risk cost. We're reviewing not only the cost but the timeline and when that money's been spent. So all the time the cost estimates are changing. The timeline is changing to bring it up to the current status and the current assessment of where the project will finish up in terms of this timeline and critical milestones. So it's entirely fluid. It's always, I suppose, we rely on that live information. We rely on bottom-up good information from the project teams, ultimately, which could feed into the project schedules, which feed up to the program schedules and plans, which feed up into the portfolio. So it's very much bottom up, very much and relies on the detail the project managers have and constant attention and constant reporting on that.
And then as a secondary part of that, how does that measure against benefits and outcomes? So how does budget measure against benefits and outcomes? I did see your benefits page, so perhaps this was asked before that page came up. Yeah. But go ahead, Michael or Brendan.
Sorry, Brendan,
Yeah,
I think you were...
obviously, every project has its own individual project business case, which sits within the project site. And we're moving very much, maybe I didn't focus on much of my slides, but one of the strategies we've had in the last couple of years is moving very much to program business cases is a big part of the strategy that Translink have. And the reason we want to do it is actually adding value, supporting business change and risk. So very much moving towards program business cases, and ultimately this is all about forming essentially a business case for the entire portfolio. Is essentially what we're building up here, and part of that strategy is to, and we're not there yet, but part of that strategy is to have a straight line of sight from our strategic objectives that Michael mentioned, the 4 strategic objectives, which are under ERPGs, all the way through the program structures and program business cases to the project objectives, the project business cases, right through to the project benefits. At the very tier of that there. So that's the structure we're building at the minute. But that's the question I was asked. Yes, the benefits was managed at project program level, but our aspiration is through standardization of how we define and measure benefits to essentially build a portfolio business case is really what we're doing.
Thank you. So the next question is about resource allocation, and it's, did the PMO manage resource allocation and hold a resource database? And if so, what kind of information did you hold against each resource?
Do you want to take it, Michael?
Yeah, so I suppose
we're talking about people, resources, and financial.
Yeah, so ultimately, obviously we have resource loaded a number of the project schedules. We mainly look at internal project management, project delivery resource within Translink. However, we have started to look outwards at other supply chain resource and ultimately resource load those project schedules to provide that information. However, that's still in its infancy. I suppose, Brendan, do you have anything else, I suppose, to add to that? I suppose it's still very much in its infancy in terms of how we resource load those sort of project schedules and things. We do have a competency management framework within Translink as well, and we do look at obviously the competencies of our own internal resources as well and manage that. But
we have, Michael's only showing in that presentation a selection of some of the Power BI apps in the presentation we have. There's one tool, I don't think we have it tonight, but was essentially with the 7 project stages we have various ways of applying estimates of project management and other key functions, project engineering, percentage, I suppose, attributes to each of those stages. So again, exactly through the same process, project, rolling up to program, rolling up to portfolio, we're able to create projections of numbers of project staff and requirements, and you can see peaks and troughs, and you can identify those projects which are at stress, simply don't appear to have enough project governance and so on. So we have done that. It's something, again, in this new version we will probably add a layer of detail to that, but it's something we have used as a broad brush, but it is built on exactly the same concept, and we've applied project resources through those project stages. And there you get exactly the same time, sort of dependent sort of estimate, exactly same as cost and schedule, but resources, we have done that there. But it's something we will bring in that in the new model as well, and to more effect.
Okay, I'm going to try and group these next 2 questions. So one question is, was the system designed in-house? And the second one is, did you develop the Power BI reports, or did you get a developer to do that for you? So I suppose
if I could start off this, Michael, I'm going to have a similar thing. There's a point maybe in my slides I didn't really draw it, and I think that question is quite a good question it reminds me of it. One of the most powerful things for me to take away from this project and setting up is when we did our lessons learned, like any other project, is the fundamental lesson for me was that we needed to have, and we were lucky in that we had developed a mature system of performance management. And I mentioned setting up a process that went all the way back to 2008. By the time we decided we needed to develop a new system, we had already defined and had embedded and were well understood within the organisation all sorts of questions like how do we manage risk, what was a KPI for cost and quality assurance. Those were all well understood in Translink, and they had been for a number of years. So that helped frame the terms, I suppose, of the design. And I think if we were just taking an off-the-shelf model and getting someone to design it, it would have taken much, much longer. We had already, I suppose, had a clear concept of what we wanted to do. But I'll ask Michael, in terms of how that transition to, we had a little bit of consultancy support. Michael, do you want to comment that then in terms of how that was?
Yeah, so ultimately we did bring in a Microsoft accredited consultant that kind of gives a hand to ultimately guide us through the process and help set up the architecture, the digital architecture, as it were, the project online system itself. But truthfully, very early on, a lot of that build and guide sort of happened between myself and one of our P3O business analysts that we have within our team, and ultimately we built the Power BI reports ourselves, and we continue to do that and refine that. It's only whenever you see the multitude of information that you actually truly have that you can then begin to see what would be beneficial to the organization as a whole. So when we started this process, we had a number of paper reports that we needed to replicate, and obviously we did that first, but very quickly you begin to realize the amount of other information that you have and how beneficial that could be to people within the organization. So we sort of sat down and began to brainstorm what we could do, and that's where, as Brendan said, the resource modeling forecasting came out of that, and some of the sort of critical milestone reporting came from that. But ultimately, all that Power BI reporting is built in-house by ourselves, and again, it's been a bit of a learning curve over the last 3 years with what you can do with Power BI, and ultimately, what you can do with the information that you have to hand. But truthfully, this system is built off good information in, good reporting out, and it really does rely on that buy-in from the sort of all project delivery teams to keep that information updated, and then ultimately from the P3O to sort of pull that through into the multitude of reports that I've shared a few of them today.
Hopefully excellent. Now there's loads of questions coming in, loads of questions. So anybody whose question doesn't get asked, we'll certainly try and respond via APM Central as well. But here's a straightforward question, but maybe not a straightforward answer. What was the cost of implementing this?
I think we did run this project, and we had a budget, and I think you may correct the right figures. The total cost of the project, including the development costs and implementation, and I think a certain amount of licensing, I think it was around 150k. It is something in that order. But I would say,
thank you for being able to drag that figure up. That's very impressive too.
I would say it has become an absolutely essential business critical tool for us. It's to the point, it's one of those ones you wonder what how do we survive without it, I suppose.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I suppose there is small ongoing costs just to sort of maintenance and things, and obviously, but they're very relatively small in the grand scheme of things.
How big is your team in the P3O?
We're one or two.
How many people do you have working in the P3O function?
Yeah, we have, I think it was 6 or 7. We have a team of 8 to sort of approve. So I think we've one or two outstanding. It's not a big team. I suppose we should say one of the.
I missed the figure, but are you talking 5 or 10 or?
8, sorry, 8. But we're actually missing an individual or two at the minute. We did bring in, as part of this process, a systems manager to analyst on a daily basis, which is absolutely essential to look after the system, and who links between ourselves and our IT department as well. So that is a critical requirement, for a system of this scale and complexity.
Yeah, and I suppose just adding to that, I suppose the way that our P3O set up, you saw the division of planning, delivery and assurance. I suppose there's an element of that. We have sort of a project control manager and risk and value manager, myself as a program development manager, and a couple of additional analysts and sort of planners underneath that. So
excellent. Again, Is the system based on a method? Does it follow MSP, Agile, Prince 2?
So the three sets of procedures I mentioned, and three tiers, or project management procedures, are based on a hybrid of Prince 2 and that Achieving Excellence in Construction Framework, which is the construction methodology. I think in England it was called Construction Excellence at the time. And it's largely around construction, procurement, largely driven by money, and also the project body, APM project body of knowledge. So there's a hybrid of those there form this or suite of project management procedures, and then the next tier up, or program management procedures, are based on the MSP principles, management successful programs, and then again the top tier portfolio management is based on P3O and management of portfolio, and then we have commonality between the three. So risk management and benefits management sort of are common. They run through all three, and the same with cost management, so on. So you have this link between all three tiers.
Thank you. Here is another one. Again, starting with praise and of the presentation and the system, and then asking, could the dashboard show how many new jobs were created across the portfolio during a specific period of time? Presumably, yes.
Yeah.
Presumably
so
it could filter
again,
how many new jobs.
Yeah, again, all projects have a start date and have a sort of a build date, already sort of programmed within that static data. So again, it's a fairly quick fix just to pull that out between a specific range of dates, and you can get the quantum of projects that have been initiated, and obviously key documented, key project information relating to them if you need to. But that's a fairly straightforward thing to do if we needed to.
I can just add that there. One of the we wanted to build in this ability for bespoke reporting. So just to give a sense of that, there we would answer all sorts of queries at any time. So you might get a query from an MP, or a political query from MLA on how many projects were run from this date to that date in a constituency or over a certain value. So you have all those parameters that Michael referred to, static data, that allows you to kind of sort and sift and actually create these bespoke reports, which we need to be able to do.
I don't know, you're breaking up there, Brendan. I don't know whether it's just here or there, but you're saying that you can do bespoke reporting. So you're generating your standard reports, but you get requests for bespoke reports and you're able to respond to those?
Yeah. Can you hear me okay, Catherine? Yeah, basically, yeah, the system allows us to provide all sorts of bespoke reports for a whole array of requests and data, which is really powerful. Yeah.
Excellent. How do you maintain consistent document naming and version control?
With difficulty might be probably the honest answer to that. The truth is we have standards set out within our procedures and with our templates, because a lot of it is centrally controlled by P3O. So when we're creating new projects within our capital plan, we're ultimately the ones naming it. Most of the documentation flows through obviously the P3O again, so we're doing reviews and assurance checks on that. So again, we can kind of capture it at those key review stages. But truthfully, we've got a system that's currently got I think 150 plus users. I think it's 150 something anyway, users on it. The reality is it's a constant sort of battle, and as you sort of ingrain that within the project delivery teams, you get consistency over time, I suppose. But having those key review points sort of ultimately make sure that key documents are have the correct naming convention and things.
And here's well, it's sensible one. How do the PMs enter information for their highlight reports, which feeds through to your Power BI reports? So are PMs entering specific data on request, or is there a read back to PMs?
So ultimately, there's
for the projects.
So there is a P3O reporting cycle. So every month we report to the same financial periods as our accounting department do. So on a monthly basis, we'll send out reminders to project delivery teams, project managers, to effectively update their registers and their schedule, and ultimately their highlight report. That highlight report is we have sort of a set idea of how many words we roughly want it to be, and they go in at that stage and update that within their project sites themselves. So in the same place that they're updating their registers, their risk register issue log, they have an area where they can update that highlight report. And by doing that, we can then pull it through. What's also quite powerful about our system is that it has a version history. So again, we can see every single version of that highlight report throughout the history of the project. So again, if anything ever, if you ever want to look back and understand what happened in, say, period 11 of 2019 of a certain project, you can actually do that as well, which is quite powerful. But effectively, it lives within that project site where those other project management tools are.
Okay, I think that covers another similar question, which was how are the SharePoint online documents, for example, registers being linked to project schedules to come together? I think that is the same question, and we've just answered it. The next one is a quite a pointed one, but it's fair. How would you begin to integrate into business that is very much stuck in time and still using local shared drives to store documents? Where to start, I suppose, is the question.
So Brendan, I suppose you've taken the P3O through this journey. I mean, do you want to comment on that?
Yeah, I think, now I don't mean be flippant, but you do have to do it in steps. I mean, it's not going to be done overnight. But I found one of the most fundamental changes happened back at the very start of this process, where we created the first performance management regime. So getting to a point where you have an agreed set of basic KPIs for some of the fundamentals of project time and cost to begin with. Creating a baseline was fundamental game changer for us. So we, at a point in time, the performance was managed. You kept moving along, but you actually never got to a point where you actually set the bar and start measuring against it. So you do need to get to a point, even if it says some fundamental basic steps, is to agree how we're measuring performance, set the bar, and crucially create a baseline. In other words, we're measuring from this point. And that, for us, changed things almost overnight, because from that, we started to understand where we were ourselves in terms of performance. It gave us a chance then to look back and say, well, how can we improve that performance? And once we started to build that performance regime, you start to add other things into it later on, like risks and benefits and so on. The performance management regime is quite a builder for this year, because it's very powerful in that it attracts that sort of attention right across the organization once you start to create that model. So I would say, bit by bit, start defining processes, get the key elements, get a coordinated plan, and I suppose the other thing right at the very, very start was we talk about P3O, about understanding and identification and categorization and so on, but actually fundamentally pulling all your projects onto a database of some description and start tracking those, and that, along with a performance management, the basis of that there, will get you going massively.
I suppose, just to add to that, we did this incrementally. We did it program by program, and it was over a period of a number of months that we managed to bring everything onto the system. The reality is that Power BI can run from Excel. It can run from a lot of, as long as you have that database, you can run nice reports and make them look nice in Power BI. But ultimately, again, it's about that good data in, good reporting out. I think is quite critical to all this.
The next question was, could you integrate P6 instead of MS project? You're saying yes if the data's there.
Yeah, yes. I mean, ultimately, you could.
In theory.
The truth is that P6 has its own Oracle enterprise management system as well that may integrate better if you're truly going down the line of Primavera 6. But yes, you could. I don't see why you couldn't do that. Yeah, you could integrate P6 if you wanted to.
Okay, I can see that we're running over time ever so slightly, and there's more and more questions coming in. But lots of them are just thanks, so that's good. Questions about huge quantities of data and how long you keep the data.
I suppose, Meg, I mean, in essence, I suppose that just the system we have, there isn't a disposal records in the same way as we would have had, when we had paper records of all our documents. So, I don't know.
Truthfully,
Megan,
we're going through that.
yeah.
We're going through that with our sort of corporate governance at the minute in terms of how long we need to store things within our system and around regulations and things. It just depends on the document itself. Truthfully, whenever we archive a site, a project, whenever it's 100% completed, it is archived effectively and it's moved off to an aside effectively, but it still exists. The documentation still exists, and all those other registers and logs still exist. And we are, as I say, working through with our corporate side.
I think. Sorry, you were just finishing off there. I'm going to try and cover the final few questions. Has the system saved money and the need for resources? Are you getting more successful delivery with the system than before the system?
Yeah, I suppose there's two ways, and Megan, you may want to come back on this. Yes, but you'll find out we've actually added staff as well to our PMO. But in terms of, I mentioned at the start that we've got to a point where the system we had was no longer fit for purpose. We had sort of if you can picture, project managers were sitting separately, disconnected from our central, we call it our master plan as was back then in the day. So we had this monthly cycle trying to gather up all this information and migrate it across and transpose it into the central consolidated plan. It was extremely time consuming, extremely slow, cumbersome. And not only that, by the time all the information was transferred from the project schedules and costs and so on onto the central system, it was probably moved on. And anyhow, so we were never dealing with the same data. But one of the things we did find was that when we introduced the system, effectively we took about a week of probably fairly redundant time that was sort of gathering data, transmitting data, and analysing and sorting it. So there was about, in terms of time, about a 25% efficiency in our monthly cycle from the PMO. To a lesser degree, the project managers, their individual times in terms of coming along, sitting there beside us or passing information and tuning for it, there's a saving there as well. Probably not as big, maybe 5 or 10% of their time. Having said that, we've probably the biggest benefit for us is not so much the time saving and cost saving, which is significant in its own right. The big saving for us is the assurance that with the data we have is from a single source all the time, and no matter what we do, whether it's right or wrong, there's one version of the truth at all times, and we can produce data, and we know we're all speaking about the same data, and no matter what report we do, it again is coming from one data. So that's a much bigger benefit. But there have been certainly resource efficiencies, significant ones. Albeit I mentioned we've had to bring in some staff as well to manage the system. So swings around a bit in that regard.
Well, I think we've come to the end of our time. We're ever so slightly over. We've gone through a whole load of questions, and thank you for answering them so valiantly. Thank you for a great presentation. There's so much positivity here on the screen. And thank you to our attendees for taking the time. It's for me then to say good night from all of us, and thank you for attending. And you know already that the recordings and the information will be available on the APM site. So thank you and good night.
Thanks.
Good night. Bye. Thank you.